Hi everyone, so I've been planning to make this video for a long time. The problem was it was really cold and there was no sun, so I had to wait to get better shots. So I'm going to compare my iPhone 13 mini with this S21 FE. You can also compare this with iPhone 12 as well because the upgrades were minor. But if you want to just compare these two phones, in US they are quite similarly priced and in India it's like 10k expensive. So you can judge by that. Let's start with the video first. So now I'm recording from the front cameras. So I'm recording in 4K 30 frames per second so you can see how it looks under the sun. Now I'm walking towards the sun and now I'm gonna turn and you can see the HDR performance. Both are in 4K 30 frames per second. Both are recording from the microphone. This is iPhone 13. This is S21 FE 5G. This is the front camera sample video at night. So this is kind of indoor lighting and the sound is coming from both of them. Now I'm going to test from the rear camera as well. So this is the footage from the rear camera. Now I'm walking so you can see the stabilization as well. You can see the white balance difference as well. If I go into the little bit darker area, as you can see, this is how it looks. Look at Tren, he's sleeping. He looks cute. If I talk about the rear video, in daylight both are doing a great job, at least in HDR and details. It's the white balance and the saturation that is more natural on iPhone. As you can see, the dashboard color is different, and if I just pause here, you can see the car color and the color of the tree is more saturated on S21 FE. That white balance gets worse in low light and the stabilization is not even close to iPhone while walking. But on the front camera, I really hate the skin tones on iPhone. Also, the flare is not very well handled on iPhone. For I think vlogging, I think Samsung is going to perform better. And if I talk about photos, let's start with the telephoto shot first. Because iPhone doesn't have a telephoto lens, and if you don't want to zoom in, I think you can get away with iPhone images, but if you zoom in, you can see the obvious difference in details. Same with the next shot. Without zooming in, it's not that bad on iPhone, but when you zoom in, you will see the difference immediately. So when it comes to telephoto camera, there is no competition. Now let's talk about the ultra-wide lens. Honestly, apart from the white balance, it's really hard to tell the difference at first glance. But if you notice at the edges, they are more distorted on Samsung, and iPhone is just a little bit better in details. But when you take an ultra-wide shot, you're not planning to zoom in. You need more area, and I would give it a tie because they're both doing an excellent job, at least in daylight. There will be a minor white balance difference in both of them, and it's going to be a personal preference, so I'm not going to judge based on that. But when it comes to low light photo with ultra wide, iPhone definitely has better details, and you will notice in the corner, S20 FE is just a mess. iPhone ultra wide camera sensor is bigger and better, and it shows here. Now let's talk about the main lens, and 80% of the time this is the camera you will be using. And this is where it gets tricky, because if one is doing a better job on white balance, another is doing a better job in highlights. As you can see, if I zoom in, S21 FE has better highlights in the tree. Even in the next indoor shot, it's personal preference. Yes, iPhone has a better white balance because it's warm, and it was actually warm in here. But I really don't mind the S21 FE look. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference unless you know how the actual scene was. And if I zoom in, there is hardly any difference in details. Like I said, it gets tricky because in the next shot, iPhone is doing better with highlights. S21 is trying to focus on the outside HDR more than the inside details. When it comes to colors, iPhone definitely has an edge from the rear camera. Like the flower was orange, even in the sunlight, iPhone kept it orange, but S21 FE made it yellow somehow. In the next shot, the color are again a bit saturated on Samsung. That does not mean it looks bad, I think it is what it is. But in terms of details, both are doing equally great. In this next picture, iPhone is doing slightly better job with HDR, but it could be because it was focusing more on flower. But on S20 FE, it was sharp on the stamp area. But for the color, iPhone definitely has an edge. In this next picture, you can see the colors are more natural. I faced the same issue with S21 Plus, but S21 Ultra had much better color, so I'm not sure what Samsung is doing different here. But if colors are not your issue and you're okay with a little bit difference in white balance, I think they both are doing great job in terms of details and dynamic range. But the things start to change when it gets dark. Like in this picture, there's an obvious difference in details. And that's where iPhone bigger sensors shine. Let's zoom and see, because they both are without night mode, so the difference is just going to be on base of their sensors. That doesn't mean iPhone always performs great, but it is definitely better in low lights. As you can see in the next picture, on the surface they both look great, but when you zoom in you can see Samsung is a little bit washed out. That's because it's going to open the shutter speed for a longer time in night mode. And when that happens, it definitely creates a brighter picture, but it gets softer. As iPhone has a bigger sensor, most of the time it won't even trigger the night mode, so you might have to do it manually. But Samsung will need night mode to compete with iPhone in low light. It might work on some occasions, but in most of the scenarios, it doesn't do as good as iPhone. When it comes to skin tones, I think I still prefer Samsung. It is more pleasing. iPhone somehow makes our skin orange. Even though the details are better on iPhone, but Samsung has an edge because you can also shoot portrait from 3x photo lens. For the front camera, it's going to be definite win for Samsung. I'm not really a fan of iPhone front camera. I do not like the skin tones it produces. Even though it has better noise control in the low light, but I think Samsung is going to be a clear win for video or photo from the front camera. So that was it. So Samsung has a clear edge when it comes to front camera and the telephoto lens. I mean, there is no competition in my opinion. If you take human pictures, that also goes to Samsung. But if you just want to talk about the main sensor, I think iPhone does perform a little bit better, at least in terms of white balance and colors. And if I just talk about video, iPhone is still the king. Do let me know if you have any question. You can also follow me on Twitter. My name is Rohit. I'll see you in the next one. Till then.